you like, if there are questions coming from social media, we can raise them. But I don't like those type of questions because you are unprepared, you know.
Okay, yeah, okay. I've got the scope you sent me.
And we are live now.
Am I clear? Visible?
Welcome everybody to another session of the Africa for Palestine webinar series. We have taken a break for some time, but we are back now, and we are rolling out these episodes from now on. Today we are joined by a special guest. All our guests are special. Comrade Pius. Comrade Pius is joining us to speak about what is happening in Swaziland and what is to be done. Welcome, Comrade Pius, to the Africa for Palestine webinar series.
Thank you so much, Comrade Ali, and thank you so much for having me. Thanks to Africa for Palestine and Salam Media as well. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Comrade Pius is a Swazi democracy activist. He is a former president of the University of Swaziland Student Representative Council. He now serves as the international secretary of the Communist Party of Swaziland. Is it right, Comrade Pius, if I say you're exiled in South Africa?
Yes, you are correct.
He is exiled in South Africa, and I know he does some work with the South African Communist Party and the Young Communist League of South Africa as well. So that is the short bio of Comrade Pius. He's a very close friend of the movement as the comrades from the Communist Party of Swaziland. We work together on many various campaigns. We work very closely on many other things as well. So they are our comrades in the international solidarity struggle, the comrades at the Communist Party of Swaziland. Comrade Pius, let's get into it. Let's dive right into it. We've seen in the past few weeks the news coming out of Swaziland, or Eswatini. You'll advise us how to title it as we go forward. But we've seen a lot of international news, domestic news, social media, the hashtags Eswatini Lives Matter, Eswatini Protest. We've seen a whole lot of information that is being fed through different channels and different mediums. So just tell us, where does this begin? Give us a brief historical background of the situation in Swaziland. Comrade Pius? Comrade Pius, do you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I was muted a bit.
Okay. No, I was just saying, give us a brief historical background of what is happening in Swaziland.
Well, thank you so much, Comrade Ali. Swaziland has been under absolute monarchy rule for the past 48 years. That is from 12 April 1973. On 12 April 1973, the late King Sobhuza, who is the father of Mswati III, unilaterally took a decision to repeal the 1968 constitution, which was the independence constitution. Now, in repealing that constitution, he banned all political parties, he banned all political activities and all political organizations. He bestowed all the executive, legislative, and judicial powers upon the institution of the monarchy. So from then, he would lead by decree. And basically, this is the situation that has been going on until today. And of course, the problems that finds Swaziland in right now do not necessarily begin only with that repeal of the constitution. We have to go a bit further than that, just a bit to summarize. On the days leading to the independence of Swaziland, we saw the relationship between the royal family and white capital. That means capital as run by white settlers. And that relationship between the two getting stronger. We had the relationship between the monarch, the Swazi monarch, and white settlers who were coming from South Africa and also from international corporations. And that class is the one which suppressed the rest of the population in Swaziland, the majority, which led to the independence, even the independence of Swaziland, being nothing but a relationship between the monarch and capital against the majority, which was the working class and the peasants. This is why you had the indigenous organizations, such as the Ngwane National Liberatory Congress, getting suppressed from 1967 in the 1967 elections, which led to the 1968 independence of Swaziland from British colonialism. So it is important for people to understand that the class struggle in Swaziland has been going on for the past at least 100 years, because often the story that is being wrongly placed is that in Swaziland, there is no such thing as a class struggle. It's just a one united community of people who have a few misunderstandings here and there. But Swaziland also suffers from the legacy of colonialism. And if you look at the legacy of colonialism, we have a new class, an indigenous class that was created by the colonialists themselves, which was the new sort of the bourgeoisie. And in the question of Swaziland, mainly that class emerged from the royal family. It's either you're directly from the royal family or those linked to the royal family. And those are the people who have been suppressing the people today. And if you look at in the 1960s and the 70s, you will have from white capital names like Carl Todd, Alistair Miller, and Natty Kirsch. I know Africa for Palestine would be aware of Natty Kirsch, his role in Palestine, you know. So he in Swaziland as well has helped the system, the regime, to create relations with apartheid Israel. This is why Swaziland today, the regime is a very strong friend of apartheid Israel. It is those roots that we find ourselves here today. So you have a majority of the indigenous population, largely, having been suppressed by the royal family, together with international, particularly international capital. And now, so with that, we have had in 1973, with the repeal of the constitution and the imposition of absolute monarchy rule, things got worse. Of course, for the 5 years of the constitution, you may say that things were better in the sense that formally we had the constitution, which allowed multi-party democracy, though we had the existence of the monarchy. However, within that 5 years, only the royal family's political party was in charge. They had won the elections in 1967, so they were in charge. So the monarchy has been in charge practically from 1967 till now. So it's more than 48 years. So you have formally the repeal of the constitution in 1973 before the elections, the second elections could actually be practicalized. So this is how we find ourselves here today. You have an absolute monarchy rule which has deepened itself so much that it has even taken each and every life of the people of Swaziland, the political life and the economic life in the people of Swaziland, with the help of international capital. So we need to have that in mind as we go along so that people understand the ongoing class struggle in Swaziland that has been going on. So the current situation we have is that in addition to the many waves of struggle, the pro-democracy waves that have happened in the past struggles, in the 80s with the treason trials, in the 90s with the 27 demands led by the workers, in 2011 with the call for the absolute eradication of the monarchy, and now today. In May, a young student of the University of Swaziland, Thabani Ngomonye, was killed at night. The police tried to conceal all information about his death because all the evidence pointed to the police. And it was discovered that the police were directly involved in his death. The Union of Students stood up to call for justice for Thabani. The protest was hashtag justice for Thabani. And with that concealment of the evidence on the facts of his death, more of the youth joined those struggles, and they escalated to democracy calls. Because the reason for that was that they could see that there is no justice that's going to come from this current system. And that's how it escalated to democracy calls. And the regime, as usual, played ignorance to the reality of democracy calls in Swaziland. And they said that there is no evidence that the people of Swaziland want democracy. And that's then what sparked communities to stand up in their numbers. So each community, they stood up and said, we want democracy. They raised many demands about the content of that democracy. And from the 59 constituencies in Swaziland, about 30 of them had presented petitions in their various communities. By 24 June, on 24 June, the Deputy Prime Minister, who was acting Prime Minister at the time, banned all the protests ongoing in Swaziland. And that's when, again, it sparked a new level of protest, where people violated that ban because it was wrong, it was illegal, and it was unilateral. Now, on the protests that have been going on have been now on a national level. Because of the suppression, the violent suppression, they all led all the way into the night, those protests. Now, the king, Mswati, he unleashed his army from the 27th of June. He unleashed his army, and the greatest death happened on the 29th of June. And that's when the army was shooting people at random. And the result today is we have over 70 people killed by both the army and the police today. And you have hundreds of people who were injured. Over 20 of them, the numbers we have right now, over 20 of them, they lost limbs, leg and arms, with hundreds more getting assaulted by shamboks and other, getting kicked. And if you look at the way things were happening, it is not only people who were in protests that were killed. The army would go to house by house, assault people, shoot people. One person would go out to buy airtime from a shop, or to go to the market and meet the army. That's how some of them met their death. So the killings have been systematic. So these are not accidental deaths, like when deaths are happening during a protest action. They are not accidental deaths. They have been targeted deaths to go out and kill people. This is why we have said that these are actually now on a level of crimes against humanity. And in that score, we are saying that there is no way that the people of Swaziland will find justice in the justice system of Swaziland. This is why international law has to come in if there's going to be real justice for the people. So as the Communist Party of Swaziland, we are saying, we cannot stop now. Mswati will not give power without a fight. And he has demonstrated that again and again. In 2019, the Communist Party started a campaign. The campaign we started was called Democracy Now. We were highlighting the urgency of the need for democracy if there's ever going to be any justice for the people of Swaziland. That campaign has been gaining ground, and during these protests, that campaign got adopted by the people. The good thing about, which is new about these recent protests, is that for the first time, they also spread out into the rural areas. We had people from the rural areas organizing themselves. So that was one key element of the recent protests. We had protests originating directly from the rural areas, something which the regime had never anticipated, something which the Communist Party was also directly involved in organizing together with other organizations, including Swayoko, Pudemo, and others. So this was a new angle that the regime had never anticipated. They never anticipated that the people from rural areas would ever be directly involved in pro-democracy struggles. Remember that Swaziland is largely rural. About 70% of the people of Swaziland come from rural areas, although a large chunk from that as well, they work in the urban areas. So if we have that level now of the rural population directly involved in struggle, it means the space for the monarchy is low, is now getting much smaller. In the rural areas, you must remember again that that's where the chiefs are, because the monarchy administrates the country through the chiefs. It is the chiefs that implement the rule of the monarchy through evictions and other fines to force the people to attend their cultural activities and so on. So now that civil disobedience, if I may put it like that, and now is coming directly from the rural areas. So, and you will see that now with even the call by Mswati to call people to the royal crawl. He largely in the past relied upon the rural areas supplying people. But this time, when he called people into the royal crawl on Friday, the past Friday, people from the rural families did not even board any of those trucks that he provided and those buses. Nobody attended his monologue. So we think that as the Communist Party, the balance of forces from the mass organizations and from the masses themselves, it has shifted sharply to the democracy side, to the progressive side. Although in our various organizations, we still need to do a great deal of work in terms of uniting the masses and also uniting amongst ourselves as the organized forces. So we still have a lot of work to do on that. But politically speaking, the masses are now on our side. And we need to be aware, though, and not fall to the tricks that the monarchy plays. The monarchy has played tricks over the years. They failed with the royal crawl meeting, but they also try other tricks. So we must be aware of that. The involvement of SADC in Swaziland is an important point for us to look into, but with caution. SADC is in Swaziland for a fact-finding mission, as they say. However, this mission is not about democracy. So SADC is aware of the problems of Swaziland, has been aware that Swaziland is an undemocratic country, despite being a signatory to many of the treaties that Swaziland has signed into, the SADC ones, the democracy treaties. As the SADC Treaty of 1992 is based on human rights. That's one of the key pillars. And SADC has been aware of that, but they've never done anything to even call upon Mswati to account for his actions in Swaziland. This is not the first time that people have been killed in Swaziland. People have been killed in Swaziland and dumped in the forests. They've been killed before, and the regime simply saying, no, these were poachers. They've been killed before. The most popular one, of course, that is known is the one of Sipho Jele, who was taken off from Workers' Day rally and killed just after that. And there were no repercussions for that. Just this weekend, 2 young men were killed by a police officer in Swaziland in a funeral. They were killed, and the reason he killed them is because they were critical of Mswati. They do not want Mswati to continue ruling this country. And so the killings are likely to continue. So this is not the end of it all. Although from the Communist Party side, we do see that the current wave of protests, yes, they have taken the struggle to a much higher level, and from which there is no turning back. Now we have a much higher level, but it is not that at that much level where we can say we have a total insurrection. We have to go much higher than that. And so we need to reorganize ourselves. We need to occupy the streets, but we need to be more organized now. The Communist Party said we need to build community councils. In those community councils, those have to come directly from the communities. And we have to focus on the various aspects, security councils in the communities, which are going to defend the people from the atrocities that are being perpetrated by the army. We need welfare councils, which are going to focus on treating people, on getting the basic needs of the people during these struggles. So we need others for mobilization and so on. So we do need to move forward, but on a more radical level. The Communist Party has said that, yes, we are building socialism, but we are not going to build socialism if we still have the monarchy intact. We need to move towards a democratic republic. And from the people on the ground, it is clear that they have had enough of the monarchy. The voices are loud and clear that we cannot live one day more with the monarchy still in charge and with the monarchy still in existence. Even those who may feel that there is a need for the institution of the monarchy itself to still be around in a democratic dispensation, they still have to reconcile themselves with the fact that Mswati has committed many crimes, has killed many people, and he has to answer in a court of law for all the crimes he has committed, for all the murders he has committed. So this is what the Communist Party is saying. So we need to move forward with those aspects. So we need the trade union movement to get involved more directly. It is a very strong force because it is organized and it has years of experience in terms of struggle. But also international solidarity is key. International forces have to come on board and directly support the revolution that is ongoing in Swaziland from various aspects. From other, it could be monetary, it could be voices, it could be equipment, necessary equipment for a revolution, and all other kinds of support. We need them. Thank you, Comrade.
Yeah, Perhaps just to give us an idea also, because we know that people of Swaziland are one of the people in the continent that live in abject poverty. But whilst Mswati lives an extravagant, a lavish lifestyle, feeding off the people of Swaziland. Just give us an idea of how he runs the country. We know that also he appoints his children into executive positions in his regime. Just give us an idea of how he runs the country.
Mswati has now entrenched himself, not just the royal family, into the economic and political life of the people, but also himself personally. Every aspect of the life of the people he wants to control. Recently in his address, he said everything in the country, Swaziland, belongs to him, including the people themselves that belong to him. Those were his statements. So he appoints the whole the government, of which all the government is accountable to him. Now, parliament itself is a toy parliament, which is why we have always stayed away from the Tinkundla elections. How the Tinkundla elections are run is that they come from the chiefs, from the chiefdoms. How they come with we have 59 constituencies in Swaziland. So each of these constituencies, they provide a member of parliament. And the process is that the process starts from each chiefdom. Now, each chiefdom presents a candidate to be elected in the constituency. The constituency will have 5 to 7 chiefdoms amongst them. And that's where the problem lies, because most often the candidate who's going to stand for election will be the one who has been approved by a chief. There are many of these obstacles. Women find themselves that when they have to talk in those elections, women are supposed to speak while kneeling down, while men have to stand. Now, all these obstacles, if a woman is not married, the chief is going to shut them down. There's been many cases, such cases, which show that. So by the time the process is done, it is simply not free, it is simply not fair, and in any event, it is going to create a parliament that has no power at all. Parliament in Swaziland has no power to call upon the king to account. It has no power to even call upon the king's prime minister to account. So it is nothing but a toy parliament from Swati to conduct his work. And in any event, Swati has unlimited power to appoint whoever he wants into various positions. And as you have said, he has his children in defense. He has appointed his children. The minister of ICT now is his eldest daughter, Khanyiso. So now they are in the process of passing cyber crimes bill, and that bill is meant to crash down political dissent. They want to follow up those who are political in Swaziland in order to shut them down. So the control that he has right now is far deeper. In 2018, on his 50th birthday, so he spent 1 billion rands, and that included purchasing his private jet, which he equipped to be a luxurious jet. So he spent 1 billion days, so 1 billion rands in one day, and on his wrist he was wearing a watch costing at least 21 million rands. So his children, they take money from the various government departments for their luxurious life. We have documented a lot of these luxurious life at the expense of the people. Meanwhile, you have a large population. Close to 70% of the people of Swaziland live below the poverty line. We have many people of Swaziland who have had to leave the country, to go into, many of them into South Africa, to try and settle there. Some of them have to get themselves exploited extremely in order for them to survive. Some of the states estimate that there are more people now living outside Swaziland than there are inside Swaziland. And those we're talking about Swazi nationals, not just South Africans who happen to be Swati. We're talking about Swazi nationals living outside Swaziland. So the poverty problem is so deep. Mswati now has over 13 palaces. And those palaces are not just normal mansions. Those are huge palaces. They are top of the art. So we have all this, that extreme inequality. Swaziland now is categorized as one of the most extreme inequality, most unequal societies in the world. That's where we are. And Mswati had said that he wanted Swaziland to be counted amongst the first world countries by 2022. And the fact of the matter is that he has been living in the first world, while the people have been living in the worst than the third world. The people find themselves in worse situations now than ever before. And that's why the situation is so urgent. That's why the Communist Party has been pushing the campaign to say there must be democracy now and not any day further. But again, it is crucial that people understand the roots of the problem. The Communist Party said we cannot just dress the monarchy in democracy robes and hope that things will be better. This is why we agree with the Catholic Bishop Jose with what he said recently, because he said to move forward without understanding where we come from will be like going to the doctor because we're in pain and accepting to live on painkillers without really knowing where the pain comes from. And so the people of Swaziland themselves need to understand that the problem is not just on Mswati alone. The problem is the class inequalities and that has been going on in Swaziland pre-independence and post-independence. And therefore, we need to unite as the oppressed people against the oppressors. And we need to now place an economic system that will now benefit the majority of the people. And we have said that in a democratic Swaziland, we should not have people who are going to just get monies just because they were born. What we have today, we have people who are getting money because of their royal family, some of them are chiefs and so on. No, everyone should be a private citizen so that everybody works to gain his life. Everyone must sustain himself by working. And the people's government must be able to support people for them to get to work. And so in the transition, therefore, we need all the various groupings. We need political parties. We need the trade union movement. We need women organizations to come in. We need the church and all faith-based organizations to come together for what we call as the Communist Party for a democracy conference. And through that democracy conference, we are going to put the pillars of our new democracy. We're going to put those pillars for us to understand what will be we need a national economic plan, a clear national economic plan moving forward, so that we are not surprised by everything else moving forward. And we need an economy that will be free from foreign aggression. So we want to build a nation which will be sovereign, a sovereign economy of a nation that has a right to self-determination. So those are the things that we need that transition authority moving forward. We need a transitional government that will be more representative from all these democracy forces. But we're insisting that in that transitional government, the monarchy must not play any role. It has no role to play in that moving forward.
And Pius, just lastly, we are also aware that Swaziland heavily depends on South Africa for the economic survival and for also political stability and legitimacy. Have the Communist Party of Swaziland and other forces engaged the government of South Africa to perhaps impose economic sanctions on Swazi's regime?
Yes, Swaziland, of course, very much depends on the South African economy. And the dependence is so high, though higher than it should be, partly because the economy in Swaziland serves only one family. It would not be this high if the economy served the people. What we have done in the past, that through the various solidarity forces and the united forces in Swaziland, we have communicated to SADC. We have the Communist Party has a campaign where it's titled "Not Another Cent from Swati," because much of the budget of Swaziland comes from SACU receipts, and that's the money which is shared between the members of SACU in terms of revenue. And that's much of that money, because South Africa is a huge economy, much of that money now goes to save Mswati. He chows that money, but because he has these monies to fall on from SACU, that's where he makes his money. So we are saying that South Africa cannot be a neutral player in all this. South Africa is a democratic state and is a member of SADC, is a member of SACU as well. They need to be clear on who is oppressed in this question, that the people of Swaziland are oppressed, and they are oppressed by an absolute monarchy, and that this monarchy is the one that is impoverishing the people. So all the monies that are going into Swaziland, literally, they're enriching the monarchy and impoverishing the people in the process. So we need the South African government to keep those monies for a democratic Swaziland, because we understand that, of course, we also have to make those sacrifices if we are to move forward. The various governments that are also giving money to Mswati, we have the European Union, you have the USA. Mswati embezzles money, but they come with more billions to save him. Sometimes it will be in the health sector, it will be in the education sector, and other sectors where they save him, they rescue him from ruin. So we need those governments to also withhold those funds that they give to Mswati, withhold them for a future democratic Swaziland, because those still, we will need that solidarity. But for now, most of the time they're giving that solidarity not to the people of Swaziland, but to Mswati, so that he continues his rule.
Thank you so much, Comrade Pius. Thank you for joining us and honoring this invitation. Comrade Pius is on social media, also the Communist Party of Swaziland, simply because I think it's important to say this, that we live in an age of misinformation. So if you're on social media and you want reliable information of what's coming out in Swaziland, and I know the Communist Party of Swaziland gives regular updates on their social media pages, please check them out on Twitter and Facebook. There's Communist Party of Swaziland, you find them. They will give regular updates, reliable updates, no fake news, and they don't spin the stories as well. So follow them there. Comrade Pius is also on social media as well, Pius Rinto. You will find him there. Pose your questions to him. And also let's try our very best to get reliable information coming out of Swaziland. Again, thank you, Comrade Pius, for joining us in our webinar series and for giving us valuable information.
Thank you so much, Comrade Ali. And of course, the struggle for the freedom of Palestinian people is still our struggle directly. And we are happy, of course, to respond to every kind of question we have, and also to get contributions on what we need to do. And what we call really from everyone else is just one thing: solidarity. That's all we're calling for.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Solidarity from Palestine to Swaziland. Thank you very much again, Comrade Pius. And we wish you nothing but the best in your quest and your struggle for freedom in Swaziland.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.